I'm ready. I'm the acting chair for the September 1st, 2020 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals, zoning. Present are Al Morrison, Walter Judon, Allison Grass, Robin Richards, and Michael Robinson. From the city, Mr. Batchel, and Ms. Ashby, and Ms. Ellington. These proceedings are being recorded. We ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, usually the Board of Zoning Appeals treats the matter as being uncontested and passes it as a matter of course. If, however, the city recommends against the application, or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals, zoning, has the authority to do three things. First, to hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Second, grant special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. And thirdly, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum is present and qualified to vote. However, an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the board members present and voting shall be required before a use variance may be granted. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. I think, Ms. Ashby, we have one deferral on the agenda today.
Yes, Mr. Robinson. B1, 83 Mary Street has been deferred.
That application will not be heard at this meeting. Number 83 Mary Street, application number 1. The first order of business is to elect a new chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals zoning. I think we all saw a very nice article in the News and Courier this morning about Lenny Krochek and his wonderful 40 years of service plus to the city of Charleston. I thought it was a well-written article and certainly at least deserving of that, if not a lot more. At any rate, it leaves us without someone at the rudder. And today we're going to call for nominations from the board in attendance for a new chairman. Are there any nominations from the board?
I nominate Michael Robinson.
Second.
Are there any other nominations from the board for the position of chairman? Are we sure about that? Hearing none, the nominations are closed. I'd like to go down the list and take a vote on those in favor of the nomination. Al Morrison,
Aye.
Senator John,
Aye.
Allison Grass,
Aye.
Robin Richards.
Aye.
Well, it looks like we have a new chairman for a period of time anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your trust, and I can promise two things. I will do my best to walk in those big shoes that left us last time, and I will not last for 40 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on, first item of business is 431 Meeting Street. Request special exception under section 54-220 to amend an approved site-specific development plan for 250 unit accommodations use. Pursuant to section 54-964 to allow modifications of the plans to include a rooftop amenity and revised parking plan, zone GB-A/Li-A. Mr. Batchelor.
2.5 or a year and a half ago, rather, the board heard a request to construct a 252 room hotel on the site. And after hearing the request and deliberating, the board did approve the request for the hotel accommodations use special exception. Subsequent to that, there was a lawsuit filed by the Historic Charleston Foundation, and that lawsuit was settled out of court. The owner of the property, applicant, agreed to reduce the number of rooms to 250 rooms and do a few other things. But the 250 unit accommodations use that's on your agenda reflects the reduced number of rooms that the owner agreed to. So fast forward to today, we have a request to alter the program, certain aspects of the program for this hotel. And I felt that it was required that these changes come back to the board for your approval. And so that is the request that is before you tonight. And I'm going to, just off the bat here, before I get too far along, I'm going to promote the applicants to become attendees so that they can, or panelists rather, so that they will be participants in this meeting. And I think I saw Mr. Ramos. Yes, okay. So just briefly, I'm going to speak very briefly about this, but the original hotel approval included a larger restaurant use on the ground floor and a pool on the third floor. And it included a parking garage that would accommodate up to 260 parking spaces with valet parking. And the revisions are to reduce the number of parking spaces in a valet parking garage setting to 220 spaces, and and then also relocate the restaurant. Well, provide a restaurant on the rooftop, which is the 8th story of this 8-story hotel, and and also relocate the pool from the 3rd level up to the 8th story. And I'll just briefly present these drawings that were submitted with the application. So just going through, the applicant submitted a very thorough explanation of the history of this project and the changes that they want to make. And the details of which I will leave to the applicants if they would like to add to the summary that I give. I'm going to go through this and get to the zoning map, which has the property zone general business and light industrial, and in the accommodations overlay. This is a exhibit that shows the proposed hotel. And this is from the original approval. There was an entry for parking off of Wolf Street and an interior guest drop-off pickup area interior to the site, and then ramps that would provide access to parking garage levels on that back portion of the property. And then you can see the ground floor uses with lobby, lounge, and dining area with a retail space on the north side. This is the proposed ground floor level, and you see a revised car drop-off area that is internal to the site, and then access to the parking garage and the lift systems that will be installed, or the layout of the lifts that will be installed. A smaller restaurant space. And moving on, more information about the parking plans and how that would work. And I should say that a lot of the newer hotels do utilize valet parking with on-site lift systems that allow more cars to be placed into a garage space on the property. It's becoming more and more common, and our experience has been good with these. The first hotel that used something similar to that was Market Pavilion Hotel at the corner of South Market and East Bay Street, with a parking elevator that provides the access to the different parking levels at the back of that hotel. But the lift systems have gotten more sophisticated, and so and this is an illustration that is not unusual with how we've seen these done with other garages. This is the approved plan showing the pool and the event terrace up on the 3rd floor along Meeting Street. This is revised plans showing the different room layouts for the levels. The 8th floor on the approved set of plans is shown here. And the proposed rooftop is shown here. There'll be some rooms up on the 8th floor. And I should, let me just do this. So you'll see the rooms over here. And also the pool gets relocated to this area with seating around it. And then there's an interior restaurant and outside eating area right here as well. So that, in a nutshell, are the changes that are proposed the staff recommendation is for approval of these revisions, conditioned on the 8th floor or 8th level uses being as depicted on this plan, with a pool and a construction of a sound barrier, which is illustrated in this next drawing right here. So you see the building wall coming up to a certain height, and then extending above that is this 24-inch wide buffer and 4-foot high solid barrier to help mitigate the sound. This is an illustration of what was used at the Grand Bohemian Hotel on Meeting Street at Wentworth with that rooftop, and I think it's worked very well. And so my recommendation would include a condition that the uses are as shown on that 8th level plan, and that the sound barrier shown here with that planter is installed around the perimeter of that rooftop terrace area. I think that concludes my recommendation. I think these are pretty minor changes, and I can understand how they will make the hotel a better, nicer hotel, which is, of course, what we would like to see. So with that, I will conclude my presentation, and if the chair would like to swear in the applicants for them to say anything additional, I think that would probably be appropriate. And I'm happy to swear them in if you would like me to do that.
Mr. Batchelder, before that, may I ask one or two questions of you?
Absolutely, yes.
I don't know if I wasn't listening closely enough, but is the revised parking plan going to reduce the total number of parking spaces?
It will reduce the total number, and it will provide 220 spaces, which is 82 spaces beyond what is required for the 250 room hotel. But with the additional amenities, the meeting rooms, the restaurant spaces, the hotel will have additional parking for people that are there to utilize those facilities. So, but we think that that's an adequate amount of parking for this size hotel.
Can I ask a question just before we move on? Is it that number of spaces more, or is it 217 spaces and they're providing 217 that are required by the accommodations ordinance, and that 220 are being provided? So really they're just 3 over? I mean, which is still good, they're over, but I'm just trying to clarify that.
Well, I think that the number of spaces that's required for a 250 room hotel is 167. That's what my notes indicate. Am I wrong on that? No.
Their application says 217.
I can clarify that. This is Steve Ramos with LS3P. The ordinance asks for 2 parking spaces for every 3 cars, which in this case is 167. But the ordinance also asks for some amount of cars for employees. And so we've indicated that we will need approximately 50 cars for employees, which is how we got to the 217 number. And, but we are providing a total of 220.
Thank you.
And
Sure.
Mr. Ramos said two spaces for every 3 cars is 2 spaces for every 3 rooms. I think
Yeah.
he just misspoke.
That's right.
And it probably would be appropriate for the chair or myself to swear in the applicants.
All right, Mr. Batchelor, would you please do that?
Okay. For Mr. Barr and Mr. Ramos, you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
And I'm sorry, but is there anybody else in your group that I should promote to being a panelist?
I think not, but I hope that they're able to see and hear. In addition to Steve Ramos and me, Capers Bar, we should have Kush Anandani, who is a principal with OMS Charleston, Ryan Miller, who is an officer in the company, and perhaps Lauren Chavis, also in the company. I don't know if you see them on your screen, Lee.
Yes. I see.
So if they've been admitted, they're not going to speak, but I would like for them to be able to see and hear if they can.
Yes. I see them. So you would like me to promote them
What does promote mean?
so that they can be seen?
Sure, yes, you probably want to see them perhaps, but
So it's Joshua Walker,
no,
right.
he's not, I don't know that he's with us. Yeah.
Lauren Chavis,
Yes,
and what were the 2 other names?
Kush Anandani, Anandani.
I don't see his name.
Or Ryan Miller, Ryan Miller, Miller.
And I don't see his name.
All right, well, I guess Lauren is on there then, okay.
They are all on one call together.
Ah,
Would you
okay.
be At 704-778-82.
I think we're good, Lee. I
Okay,
think they're all with Lauren Chavez, so we're good.
Good.
gotcha.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Barr, Mr. Reynolds, would y'all take the lead?
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be in front of you. Chairman Robinson, congratulations on your election. As Lee said, this project was approved some time ago. It was February the 19th of 2019. But Historic Charleston appealed, and we didn't settle that appeal until October of 2019. And I think this may have been the last project under the previous accommodations ordinance. But we're before you tonight under the vested rights ordinance, because having been approved, as you may know, we have a vested right to use the approval that's been granted. And under the vested rights ordinance, we have the right to seek amendments. The original design of this project was done by some architects from out of town, and I don't think anybody has really been able to explain succinctly or clearly why the original design was for 260 parking spaces, because the ordinance requirements are, as we've said, for 250 rooms, it would be 167 spaces. My guess is that the architects were simply trying to maximize as much as they thought that they could into the allocable space. So before you tonight, there are really two major points. One is we're seeking to reduce the number of parking spaces to the number required by the ordinance from 260 down to 220. And we get, it's actually 217, but we get to that count as we've discussed at the ratio of 2 spaces per 3 rooms. 167 spaces are required for the room count. We estimate at peak times we'd have 100 employees, and the rule of thumb is you can assume that 50% of them will drive. So 50 parking spaces for employees brings you to 217, and we will talk you through how those 220 spaces will be provided. So I'm going to work quickly as I can through the ordinance requirements, and then I'd like to turn the floor over to Steve Ramos, who will walk you through the actual design to show you how this is being laid out. So we've already spoken about the parking spaces and how we're simply complying with the requirements of the ordinance. An additional request that we have is that you review the rooftop application. Now, there is no existing rooftop ordinance. There is a draft ordinance that I think was drafted by Mr. Batchelder and other members of his staff. I think it may have been presented to City Council on one occasion, but it's never been received first reading, so it's not even technically pending, but we are complying with all of its conditions. To clarify, the initial approval that you've granted was for 8 stories of a hotel. The rooftop use that we're referring to is not really on top of the 8th story. It's in the space of the existing 8th story. So in the space of the existing 8th floor, we're proposing to relocate a swimming pool. Steve will walk you through this in a minute, Mr. Ramos, that was formerly shown on the 3rd floor roof up to the 8th floor. We're relocating the full service restaurant. And I say full service because it's required to be open 7 days a week, 3 meals a day, from the 1st floor to the 8th floor. And with surrounding terraces, we're relocating that to the existing 8th floor space, which will also include some guest rooms and guest suites. So the point to be made, though, is this is not on top. This is not on top of what was previously opposed. It's in place of the existing 8th floor. The pending rooftop ordinance, and Mr. Ramos will take you through this more specifically, provides that no electrical loudspeakers or amplifiers may be used. There must be integrated architectural features to minimize the noise transference. Thirdly, that no strobes or flashing lights are permitted. Fourthly, that it must be at least 150 feet away from a residential zone district. And Mr. Ramos will walk you through and show you how we will be complying with all of those conditions. Additionally, to an extent, there is an increase in the total restaurant and bar space from the original proposal. The ordinance provides that it shall not exceed 12% of the total interior conditioned space. The original approval was about 1.5%. The present proposal could be as high as 8%. And I say could be because you'll see when you hear from Mr. Ramos that a ground floor space could either be retail or a restaurant and bar use as well. So the requests we have are that you approve the reduction in the number of parking spaces because we fully will comply with the requirements of the ordinance. And to the extent that it passes your approval, we want you to hear the rooftop terms. And as Mr. Batchelder has suggested, since there's no rooftop ordinance, he is suggesting that an approval will be conditioned on the applicant complying with the rooftop components as presented. I'm going to have a few closing remarks after you've heard from Mr. Ramos, but I'd like to turn the floor over to him now to walk you through the various changes. Steve, if you'll take it over.
Sure. Thank you, Capers. Steve Ramos with LS3P, the design architect for the project. And if you hear a barking dog or a crying child, that's likely to be coming from my home, so apologies in advance. Lee, if you could go back to the ground floor plan, which was, I think, slide number 2.
Okay.
As Capers mentioned, LS3P was hired at the beginning of 2020. And so we weren't a part of the original design that was approved. And when we got involved, one of the first things we did is we reviewed the existing design and we provided commentary to the owner on how we thought the design could be improved. And some of those items require us to come back in front of you all. And that was something that we took very seriously. And although I very much enjoy these meetings, they do take a lot of time and a lot of diligence. And so I want to highlight that we thought it was very important that these changes be made, so much so that even if it required further zoning approval. But starting with the ground floor, if you could go back one more slide, Lee. Perfect, thank you. We've already mentioned that we're reducing the cars from 260 to 220, so I won't belabor that point. But I do want to point out that some of the other design improvements that we're making, the arrival of a hotel guest is very important. And for this original design that was improved, you'll see right in the middle of the screen, there's the word fountain. And when you were to arrive at this hotel, you would have effectively be pulling into what felt like a parking garage. And we didn't feel like that was the best way to arrive. In addition, the way service vehicles got in and out of the site wasn't really figured out. And that was something that we felt like needed to be figured out. So if you go to the very next slide, you'll see that in the top right-hand corner of the plan, we have accommodated a service lane. There's actually an existing curb cut that is there right now. So we have a way to get deliveries, things like trash, in and out of the site, which is a really effective way to do it. In addition, on Wolf Street, if you are to visit as a guest, we have a very nice car drop-off that is covered, that is off of Wolf Street. If you recall, the previous design had you pull all the way into the site, almost in a garage, whereas this car drop-off is going to be much more visible and pedestrian-friendly for people for the hotel. We mentioned that the hotel parking is reduced from 260 to 220. All of the parking is being kind of congregated into that skinny part of the building. We kind of refer to that as the tail of the building. And so we are utilizing mechanical parking lifts and car elevators to effectively stack cars vertically. I feel like that's a really effective way to do it. All of the parking is going to be valet. And so we're very confident not only that it'll work effectively, but that we'll have ample parking for all of the uses of the hotel. That includes the hotel guests, that includes folks that are coming to the restaurant, as well as the meeting space in the hotel. Next slide, please.
Steve, before you leave that, can I interject?
Please.
Go back, Lee, to that prior slide, please. earlier when I alluded to the fact that a restaurant bar use could be as high as 8%, you'll see the shaded area there is designated. It reads, I think it reads retail / restaurant optional. So that could be an additional restaurant use on the ground floor. The main restaurant, the full service restaurant, will be at the 8th floor level. But that's why earlier when I spoke about it could be as high as 8%. If that ground floor area is used for a restaurant and or that would also serve alcoholic beverages, then that could elevate the percentage to 8%. So that, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. Go ahead then.
Well, in addition to that point, we have also pulled back the facade of the building along Meeting Street so that we can have sidewalk dining. And so that sidewalk dining, we have also calculated into that number, that 8% number. Next slide, please. I won't bore you with this, but effectively we're stacking cars on 3 different levels. We're using car elevators to take cars from the 3 levels. We have 3 separate car elevators, and then we're stacking cars vertically. And this is a strategy we've been doing for about 5 or 6 years now on various hotel projects. Next slide. This is the 3rd floor plan for the previously approved drawing. And you can see that there's a swimming pool that is right on Meeting Street and a big terrace around it. One of the first things we realized is that that swimming pool was not going to get very good sunlight. And we said, you know, if you're going to do a swimming pool, let's do it right. And so that was what really kind of was the impetus to us pushing the pool up to the top of the building. If you're going to have a big terrace, we felt like that was also most effective up at the top of the building. Next slide. And so this is our new 3rd floor. And so there, instead of an open terrace to Meeting Street, we have now pushed that terrace up to the 8th floor, which will be more effective at mitigating sound. And this floor is now predominantly hotel guest rooms, with the exception that there is a fitness room on this floor. Next slide. So this is the previous design, the previously approved design. This is what levels 6, 7, and 8 looked like. And so at level 8, it was only guest rooms, whereas our level 8, which is the very next slide, has hotel guest rooms, as well as it has a swimming pool, it has a restaurant. And so I mentioned that we're taking the swimming pool that was down low, we're now putting it on the southern face of the building where it will get optimal sunlight basically all day. It will also have fantastic views of the Cooper River to the east, the Lower Peninsula to the south, as well as the Ashley River to the west. So it'll have a fantastic vantage point. You're going to be 100 feet up in the air at this level. And we felt like having a restaurant, bar, and outdoor terrace would be an awesome amenity to basically to create synergy with that swimming pool. And these would be public functions. So you don't have to be staying at the pool to utilize, you don't have to be staying at the hotel to utilize the restaurant or bar. I'm not sure about the swimming pool yet, but definitely the food and beverage operation will be open to the public. We know that rooftop bars have been a bit of a taboo subject the last few years in Charleston. That's one of the reasons we originally reached out to Lee to recommend that we kind of volunteer to come back to the board because it's very important to the design, and we wanted to make sure that we were doing this right. And that's why we volunteered to use the ordinance that was presented to City Council last year, although it was not approved. And Lee did a really good job of explaining the points, as did Capers. But effectively, the ordinance asks that we do not have loud music or amplified sound, which we are more than willing to comply with. The ordinance asks that we don't have strobe or flashing lights, which again, we will comply with. The ordinance asks that we are more than 150 feet from a residential district. In this case, we are 210 feet from the closest residential zoning, so we comply. And then the last point, which is point number 3, actually, I'm sorry, point number 2, that the building shall incorporate architectural features that are permanent and sufficient to minimize the spread of noise. We have identified that we have the East Side neighborhood to the east. We have the Sky Garden student apartments to the west. And we have the Elon Midtown project to the north. And so at those areas, the east, the west, and the north, we have created a buffer along those edges that will mitigate the sound. I do want to highlight that we have not created this buffer on the south face. The south faces Wolf Street and does not face residential districts. There we would like to have the flexibility to not have a buffer because we don't feel it is necessary. And so if you look at the very next slide, the next slide does a good job of highlighting that buffer, which again is a 24-inch horizontal buffer and a 48-inch tall barrier, which will be very effective at mitigating sound. Lee mentioned we used this on the Grand Bohemian and it was effective. And so we have reviewed this with our neighbors, both at the Sky Garden, Elon Midtown, as well as the East Side neighborhood and Cannonboro, Elliottboro, which is the neighborhood of which I reside. And generally people have not had any objections to this rooftop. So we feel really good that we've put our best foot forward with this. And so with this, I'm just going to turn it back over to Capers for anything that I may have missed or any closing comments.
Yes, thank you very much. As Steve alluded to, we've met with Historic Charleston, we've met with the Preservation Society, with the East Side Neighborhood Group and the Mazik-Ragsborough Group. I can't speak for any of them, except to say that we've reached out to them and made to them the same presentation that you're hearing this afternoon. And I'm an optimist at heart, but I felt good vibrations from all of them. It's no great secret that this was the project that breathed life into the creation of the Accommodations Task Force. That by October of 2019 saw a fully integrated and enacted accommodations ordinance, which is in its present form. During those months between our approval in February and the final passage in October, we were negotiating with Historic Charleston Foundation, which resulted in a product of which I think my clients can be immensely proud. I think Historic Charleston, I won't pretend to speak for them, I think they're very pleased with it. And it's a much improved project over what you approved in February of 2019 in the following respects. First, and this was only a slight compromise I would have to concede, we were approved for 252 rooms. The ordinance permits only up to 250, so we've cut the room count down to 250. But very significantly, under the prior ordinance, there was no requirement that an accommodations applicant contribute to the City of Charleston Affordable Housing Fund. So as a part of our private agreement with Historic Charleston, and as a recorded covenant, we have agreed to contribute to the City of Charleston Redevelopment Corporation for affordable housing a sum calculated at $5.10 per square foot, which is what the current ordinance requires, which will be paid before a certificate of occupancy is issued. Equally significantly, in the private agreement with Historic Charleston, OMS Charleston, who is the applicant here, agreed to a number of significant architectural betterments. There are about 8 of them. I'm not going to go into the finite details of them all unless you would like me to, but they include, among other things, the commitment that on the ground floor, the ceiling heights will be at least 14 feet high, and on the building exteriors, all cladded materials shall be authentic brick or cut stone or smooth stucco or clapboard rather than any synthetic in all visible areas up through and including the first 4 stories. And above that, the architectural quality will be equal to or better than the existing BAR standards. There are specifics in the private agreement as to the detailing of the windows, for example, which was an important aspect to Historic Charleston Foundation, to which OMS Charleston has committed. So suffice it to say that the product of the product of the negotiation with Historic Charleston has immensely improved the quality of what you approved in February of 2019. And we strongly believe that particularly these 8th floor amenities that we've described to you and that Mr. Batchelder is proposing be a condition of your approval here tonight, will further enhance the quality of the end product at the end of the day. So that represents our presentation, and we thank you very much for your attention. I'm sure that Mr. Ramos would be open to any questions, as will I.
Thank you, Mr. Barr, Mr. Ramos. Mr. Batchelder, I have a question. In Mr. Ramos's presentation, he mentioned that he was looking for relief from the barrier that's on the screen now on the south part of the building by the pool. Was that accounted for in your recommendation?
Yes, I should have clarified that. They have it, they have the barrier shown along here on the front side of the terrace of the rooftop. And then they also have it shown back here on the back side adjacent to the Sky Garden apartments. But they do not have it shown on the south side along Wolf Street. So yes, the sound barrier, my condition would be that the sound barrier is installed per the depiction shown on this 8th floor plan.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Lee, do you
Batchelder.
have,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
I'm
Aaron.
sorry, Lee, do you have an elevation of that
The
side?
sound barrier?
Yeah, for either from Meeting Street or Wolf Street.
Oh, you mean of the hotel, proposed
Yeah.
hotel? I think the opening.
The first slide has a conceptual sketch that is something that we've been considering. It's by no means a final depiction. You know, that the railing is so far up there, you can't really see it.
So we're looking at Wolf Street, we're looking at Meeting and Wolf, that corner,
That's correct. So that's right.
and the 8th floor, so
So you can
up on
see,
on the left-hand top, that's where the
yeah,
pool is?
if you see that very top area, on the top left,
Uh-huh,
there's some little people that are standing at a railing there. That's at the 8th
Okay.
floor. So
and
there's
so
like,
that would be the area that you're considering not having a buffer.
that's right. So, you know, we thought it would be great if that one area that looks back over the peninsula, it doesn't face any residences, might not need one. You know, we could have like a glass railing, for example, or an open railing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one. Is the application specifically conditioned on compliance with the as yet unpassed ordinance about the amplified sound and et cetera, which I understand they're complying with, but I'm wondering if that compliance is locked in as a condition or that's just voluntary.
I think it should be a condition of the approval.
Yes, we agree. We agree.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Is anyone else present that wishes to speak on behalf of the application?
I don't believe there's anybody else who has signed up to speak. Penny, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but
No, Mr. Batchelder, you are correct. No one else has signed up to speak.
Is there any opposition that signed up to speak?
No, Mr. Robinson, none that I am aware of.
Based on that, are there any other comments, questions, or motions from the board?
Move approval with the conditions expressed.
Mr. Morrison moves approval with conditions. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor, when I call, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Al Morrison,
Aye.
Walter Dujan,
Aye.
Allison Grass,
Aye.
Robin Richard. Ms.
Aye.
Richard. Michael Robinson, aye. Unanimously approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. It's nice to see you through these means.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Next item is 83 Mary Street, which has been deferred. Following that, we have 104 Cooper Street. Request special exception under section 54501 to allow construction of a single-family residence on a lot of insufficient size. Lot area 1498 square feet, 2,500 square feet required. Request variance from section 54-301 to allow construction of a single-family residence with a 7.2 foot west side setback, a 10.2 foot total side setback, 9 feet and 15 feet required. Zone general business, Mr. Batchelder.
I'm also promoting and demoting people in Zoom, and so bear with me for just a second. Technology is not my strong suit.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. So 104 Cooper Street. This is a commercially zoned property, actually, that sits on the north side of Cooper Street at Nassau Street. And it's a vacant lot. It was adjacent to the old Cooper River Bridge right-of-way as it crossed between Meeting Street and the Cooper River. And so that area just to the north, which is also vacant at the present time and zoned for very high density and intensive development, which also allows commercial use. So there's a huge change going on in this part of the peninsula, and actually there is some housing that is under construction on that property to the north. But this vacant lot, as you can see, is commercially zoned, but is similar in size to other residential properties on the south side of Cooper in this vicinity. And the proposal is to construct a single-family residence on this lot. it will be compatible with the surrounding uses on Cooper Street. So I'm going to zip through that. So this is a floor plan showing, or site plan rather, showing the proposed house on the lot. In order to fit a house on this lot, they're also asking for a setback variance off the west side over here, and a total side setback of 10.2 feet. The lot itself is smaller than the minimum lot size required for a single-family residence in this zone district. But again, this is a lot that faces Cooper Street, a street with other residential homes on it, and we think this is a very appropriate use. It's a lot that's similar in size to other lots that do have single-family homes. So we see the construction of a single-family home here as a positive thing for the neighborhood. And of course, it will provide parking to meet the requirements, and I can advance. So this is these are floor plans, and it's hard to see, but there's one bedroom on the first floor, and this is a garage on the ground floor with living first on the first floor, and another floor of bedrooms on the second floor above. So one bedroom on this floor and two bedrooms above. Three bathrooms total, 3 bedrooms total, and about 1,400 square feet of conditioned floor area. So that is the proposal, and our recommendation is for approval to accommodate the use on this property and allow it to be built in a way that is similarly situated on this lot as to the homes on other lots on Cooper Street. And I think, I'm not sure, I'll just check and see. I think, and Ms. Ashby, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've had anybody sign up to speak in favor or against this.
You're correct, Mr. Batchelder.
And I do not see the applicant.
Mr. Batchelder, sorry, it's Howell. Do you have a depiction of the view from Cooper Street? Or is that it on the right there?
This on the right would be the front elevation along Cooper Street, correct? And there's a garage door on the ground level, 2 floors above.
Okay. And then that's obviously the rear appearance on the left.
Correct. And if I advance this slide, this is the side view elevation from Nassau Street.
Believe no one's present to speak for or against.
Correct.
Right.
Any other questions of Mr. Batchelder? Any comments, any motions?
I move for
Motion
approval.
for approval,
Uh,
or second, whomever just made it.
So made by Mr. Jadon, seconded by Ms. Grass. All in favor? Al Morrison,
Aye.
Walter Jadon,
Aye.
Nelson Grass,
Aye.
Robin Richards,
Aye.
Michael Robinson, aye. Unanimously approved. Next item on the agenda is 174 Gordon Street. Request variance from section 54-301 to allow a 1-story addition, family room and bath, with an 18.8-foot rear setback to allow an HVAC platform with a 3.2-foot east side setback, 25 feet and 9 feet required, zoned SR2. Mr. Bachelor.
This is a residence in Wagner Terrace. And this map shows the location on the north side of Gordon Street between 8th and 9th Avenue. And this will be a better map to illustrate this, but this lot has behind it a large residential lot that does not have a home on it at the present time. And then you see on the north side of that vacant lot what looks to be a street, but that's not actually a street. That's the marsh on that side of the neighborhood. It was platted originally to be a street, but the street was never constructed. So the vacant lot that is behind 174 Gordon has its access off of 8th Avenue. And you see the home on the in the next block that is off of that also has access off of 8th Avenue back there along the marsh. But there's nothing behind this house today. And this aerial view gives you a view. So you see the vacant lot back here. And the proposal is to construct a one-story addition off the back of this house. And one thing I'll point out from this aerial view is that both of the neighboring houses extend further back on their lots than does 174 Gordon Street. And if I back up, you can see that illustrated in this map. This house is closer to the rear property line at the back edge of the house, and same with 182 8th Avenue, 182 Gordon rather. So the applicant has submitted their request and explained how they feel that they meet the variance test. And I'm just going to zip right through that because I don't believe there's any opposition to this. But here's a plan that depicts the addition shown here off the back of the existing house. And and then also they're relocating the AC stand from over here to this area right here. So those two aspects of the plan require your approval for variances. And if I advance the slides, here's a floor plan, elevation view, another elevation view from the other side, and a drawing depicting the addition off the back of the house. So, and I'll go back to that site plan, but on the site plan, the applicant also indicated the line of extent of the neighboring building footprint. So here is the line for the home at 182 next door. And here is the line of extent of the home at the residential property on the other side to the east. So you can see that the proposed addition will fit roughly in line with those existing homes. And with these lots in Wagner Terrace, smaller rear yards are not unusual, and this is only a one-story addition to what is a relatively small home. So our recommendation is for we feel that they meet the variance test, and we do have indication that both of the property owners on the other side, 172 and 182 Gordon, are don't object to this request. And I know that I believe the applicant is attending the meeting. And and Ms. Ashby, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've got anybody who has signed up to speak other than the applicant in favor or against this. Is that correct?
You're correct, Mr. Batchelder.
There's no opposition?
No, Mr. Robinson.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Batchelder? Or any comments, any motions?
I move for approval.
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Judon,
Aye.
Ms. Grass,
Aye.
Ms. Richards,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson, aye. Application is unanimously approved. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is 49 Amherst Street. Request special exception under section 54-110 to allow horizontal expansion, living, dining room, and vertical extension, second-story bedroom bath, to a non-conforming building footprint that extends a non-conforming 0-foot east side setback, 3 feet required, zoned DR2F. Mr. Batchelder.
So here we have an existing home in the East Side neighborhood. And here's a map showing the property's location between America and Hanover Street. This zoning map illustrates the size of this property, which is relatively large for a residential property in this neighborhood, and very deep, as you can see. And you also notice that the house, the footprint in this map is relatively small on this lot, and that the other lots have similar sized lots. Other homes have similar sized lots, larger homes. So what is being proposed here is a rear addition to the existing house. And of course, the existing house was constructed along the north side property line with no setback off that side property line. And the addition is proposed to be in line with that north side 0 setback of the existing house. Here's the existing house. And the other homes in the immediate area are shown here. This aerial view, again, shows the existing house right here and this large backyard where they want to build this addition. But you can also see that these properties north and south of it have larger, deeper footprints, homes with deeper footprints on them. So the applicant has provided this as an illustration that years ago there was an additional building at the back of this property that is no longer there. These are photographs of the existing property. In the lower right photograph shows the very large backyard that exists today. And other homes in the immediate area within 1 block of this subject property that have 2-story additions off the rear. So what is being proposed here is a 1-story hyphen connecting room and a 2-story rear section of this addition. And again, the issue is with the 0-foot north side setback up here. And they're extending that north non-conforming setback and requesting the special exception to allow that, which becomes an issue of light and air impacts to adjoining properties, and whether the proposed extension is an unreasonable intensification of that existing non-conforming building footprint. Floor plans show the changes. And then the second floor here on that rear addition. Elevation views. Existing on the top, proposed on the bottom. And then from the neighboring property to the north. And then an additional view of the proposal. So our recommendation is for approval. We view this proposal to be consistent with other additions that we've reviewed and approved in past years. And so our recommendation is for approval of this request. We don't feel that this will adversely affect light and air and unreasonably affect the light and air and create those impacts for the adjoining property. And I don't believe, Ms. Ashby, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we've got anybody that has signed up to speak in favor or against this. I know the applicant is present and the homeowner is present.
You are correct, Mr. Batchelder.
And I will conclude with that and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Batchelder? Based on the fact there's no opposition, would entertain a motion from the board.
Move for approval.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Jadon,
Aye.
Ms. Grass,
Aye.
Ms. Richards,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. Unanimously approved. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 2113 Amica Street. Request variance from section 54206 to allow a church building to be closer than 25 feet to adjoining properties. Request special exception under section 54206C to allow a church facility, food bank, and independent living facility in a SR1 single-family residential zone district.
This is an unusual request. Silver Hill Magnolia is a small neighborhood in the neck and a small residential neighborhood in the neck. And this map shows the location of this property in that neighborhood. We have residentially zoned properties and homes and a church. And then to the north and south, you have heavy industrially zoned property. And Interstate 26 is to the west. The owner of the property would like to permit the church in the neighborhood to construct this facility that will be a food bank and independent living facility operated by the church. And that becomes a special exception use because a residentially zoned property is allowed to have a church use as a special exception, subject to meeting certain conditions, which I will go over real quickly. The ordinance says that church uses, except for parking for church uses, shall only be permitted as an exception within all residential districts where the board, after review, finds that the building will not be closer than 25 feet to an adjoining property line and that the required off-street parking spaces will be provided. Parking for church uses in all residential zones shall be permitted as a conditional use under 54207Y. So that is a standard for the special exception. And let me just show you exactly what they are proposing to do so you can understand how they propose to meet those requirements. So this is a residentially zoned property within this neighborhood. This aerial view shows you the lot in question right here. And this is the church. And there are areas for parking for the church. And then you've got the homes that are shown here. And neighborhood's been there a long time. The owner of this property is, as she explains in this attachment, that has been allowing this property to be used for a facility that serves the community, and that due to the pandemic, there's an increased demand for the food and that they provide and services that they provide. And so that they want to support that program by allowing this property to be improved with a new building that will house what's going on already, but not in any permanent way. This would be a permanent facility to accommodate that use, and operated Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, with food pickup between 3 and 5, and also on special holidays and Saturday events, but not to exceed 11 p.m. And as you can see, additional parking available on Silver Street behind the church within 400 feet of this property. In the plans, show how they would build this building on the property with some parking spaces off of Amaker Street. Their close-up view, and then the floor plan. So the ground floor becomes the food bank center, and upstairs becomes an independent living facility. In a building that is compatible with the surrounding homes that exist in the neighborhood. So the building, if I go back to the site plan, cannot meet the 25-foot setback requirement which is part of the special exception requirements for a church. And so in these instances, and they're not uncommon with religious facilities on the peninsula, certainly, we end up having to ask the applicants to seek a variance, and they do. And generally speaking, we've approved these, we've supported these, and the board has approved these in the past. And in this case, we have a petition that's been signed by a number of people in that neighborhood in support of this request. And it includes people from outside the neighborhood as well as people from the neighborhood itself. And I believe that there's overwhelming support from the neighborhood for this facility. And I know that the owner of the property is attending. And so anyway, we support this request and variance to allow the special exception to be approved to accommodate this facility. And I know that we don't have anybody who has signed up to speak in favor or in opposition to this. Is that correct, Ms. Ashby?
That is correct, Mr. Batchelder.
So with that, I'll conclude and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from Mr. Batchelder? This is a use variance, which requires 2/3.
No.
Just to, correct?
No, it's actually not a use variance. It's just a variance to allow the church building to be closer than 25 feet. But the use itself is a special exception.
Yeah, the special exception requires
Correct.
a 2/3 majority, 2/3 vote of those voting.
No, special exception is just a simple majority.
Okay.
And you did indicate that the neighborhood was in favor of the project?
Yes,
Is that correct?
we have a petition here that was submitted because the M&M Outreach, McLaughlin Midway Baptist Church, Food Bank and Community-Based Initiative to empower and foster all. We are most graciously asking for your support for the construction of a building for our outreach services, outreach activities. In so doing, the undersigned support the proposed development to be located at 2113 Amaker Street. I have a petition that is 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. Each page has around 15 signatures on it.
Oh, well, that's great.
And a number of the signatures are from folks in the neighborhood.
Mr. Batchelder, if I may interject, do you see the applicant?
I see, I believe, I'm not sure if this is the applicant. I'm going to promote them.
Okay. Because it may be a Miss McLaughlin.
Yes, I
And-
see the owner of the property.
Okay, and Mr. Maybank.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I think he went out.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Pack's here, Ms. Dixon, and I'm Art Maybank. I don't know if you can see us, but can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Well, we can see you guys and hear you.
Mr. Batchelder, do we want to swear anybody in?
I think that probably would be a good idea. So for the folks that would like to speak, and I know that's Mr. Maybank, is that correct?
Yes.
Would anybody else like to speak?
We have the property owner here, Ms. Patricia McLaughlin, and we have Ms. Dixon, one of the people that work with the program.
Okay.
They're asking me if I want to speak, I'll be able to talk for them. If I can't answer it, they're right here with me.
Okay, well, Mr. Maybank, if you would raise your right hand and
Yes,
talk to me if you.
all three of us.
Okay, and Miss Dixon and Miss McLaughlin,
Yes. Yes.
if you would, do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Very good. Does anyone on the board have any questions for the applicants?
I don't have a question, but I think it's a good idea as to what they're doing. It's good for the community during this time.
You'd like to hear a statement from what they're going to do?
No, I'm commenting on the food bank. I think it's a good idea as to enhance that coming from the church. I think it's good for the community itself. I'm just commenting on that.
Well, I think it really is a resounding positive vote by the neighborhood. There's no opposition, so I think I agree with Mr. Jadon.
I agree too, and I would like to move for approval.
I'd second.
Very good. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Jadon,
Aye.
Ms. Grass,
Aye.
Ms. Richards,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson. Application is unanimously approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you too.
Oh, thank the Lord.
That concludes the meeting, I believe, Mr. Batchelder.
All right, you got it.
That concludes the meeting. Yes.
That's it.
You have been sitting there. Hey, come on, one thing here, get two things. Yes, sister. Amen. Amen. Good. Good.
Yeah, I'm on our way now.
Well, we made it.